I don't stand side by side with nobody till I bleed with them first.
What did we just see? You probably think this world is a dream come true.
When I step into this ring, yeah, bro, I am addicted.
Don't sleep on Luca!
Maybe tomorrow we'll all wear 42.
If you fight for your dreams will fight for you.
All right, so the NFL is about to start. My favorite sport. I really love football. Love my Eagles, obviously. Had so much fun covering them last year. And I'm excited to do it again this year. And things will look a bit differently than how this episode is. Because I don't know if I've ever mentioned it on this channel. I know I've mentioned it in my podcast with my two friends. I'm in college, so I don't necessarily have the most time to demonstrate that. The Phillies episode that went up on Tuesday was recorded right before this one that will be coming to you today on Wednesday. And I recorded them back to back because I have to, do some work for school and I don't necessarily have the time. So going forward, things are going to change for both that the Phillies recaps and what will be these Eagles recaps, where I'm thinking of combining them into one, splitting it into halves, where the first half is talking about Phillies, second half talking about the Eagles, and putting that like chapter bookmark so that people, who are only interested in the football stuff can go there, or the baseball stuff, whatever it may be. But so yeah, this episode will likely not be setting the standard for what the future Eagles recaps will look like, but that's just to preface, get that out of the way. But so starting off, yes, want to get this video out before the NFL season starts tomorrow on Thursday with the Chiefs and Lions. Should be a good game. Eagles are playing the Patriots week 1, so I want to get this out just like I did last year. A sort of out, I guess you would call it outlook on the season. Really, sort of predicting what the schedule might play out. Sort of expectations I have. And starting off, we're going to look at the offense. Jalen Hurts looking to prove that this is going to be the norm going forward. That what happened last season wasn't some fluke, wasn't just flash in the pan. He's going to look to prove that this is the norm going forward. Now, what I want to see is improvement in the passing game. You got two great guys, But at the same time, with the running back room, I know that they're going to have a lot of incentive to run that ball. And I just hope to see more passing. And from the team overall, I hope to... I know the whole thing is the risk and you want to stick with what's safe, but I want to see more passing in the second half of games especially. I don't want to just see us commit to a straight run game, Speaking of the running room... speaking of the running game, the running back room, Kenneth Gainwell, likely our number one back, at least the way I see it, especially because I need DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny to prove that they can be healthy. Gainwell obviously will look to prove that he can be that lead back, that he can be the one that they go to. And I need Swift and Penny again, like I said, to prove that they can be healthy. They're two guys that have kind of struggled, and honestly, in my personal opinion, I think for the two of them, not having to be those lead backs and splitting the carries with so many other guys, that you look at this running back room, that they're going to split with Gainwell. They're likely going to split with Boston Scott in certain games. It will lead to these two having good seasons, It may not be flashy stats season, like 1K yards and 10K touchdown, or 10K, what am I saying, 10 touchdowns, But I could see both guys having really good seasons overall with the running back room, especially with them being able to be used conservatively. The wide receiver room, we already know what to expect out of Brown and Smith, A.J. Brown's going to be the number one. At this point, A.J. Brown and DeAndre Smith are 1A, 1B. There is no second receiver, It's going to be amazing to watch them, but I think what it comes down to is depth. If any of those guys go down, who can step up? If any of those guys are struggling in any given game, who is going to step up as our wide receivers 3 and 4? I'm not necessarily too keen on the depth we have. Quez Watkins needs to prove he can be consistent and be reliable. And after that, I don't know. Maybe I honestly want the Eagles to maybe look at what the free agent market is. Maybe after the first game, see how the first game goes. And maybe look at the wide receiver market, either on free agency or even potentially trade. You don't need a big flashy name, but someone who can be in that third spot. But at the same time, where there is a guy who's technically number 3, but we'll get to him later because I want to save him for last. But the O-line, similar to the wide receivers, we know what to expect from our guys. Mailata, Kelsey, Lane Johnson, they're going to be at their peak. They're going to be at their very best. I don't expect any regressions from those 3 guys. They're real good. Dickerson should continue to be a consistent piece. And Juergens is hopefully going to prove his versatility, that he can play guard at least until he can slot in back at center once Kelsey retires, you know. But of course, the final piece of the offense, Dallas Goedert. Goddard has some high expectations for himself as he wants to try and reach 1K yards, he said. That's going to be difficult in an offense that features A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, along with a run-heavy offense that gives them more incentive this year to run the ball with all the pieces they have. But I firmly believe he will be a dark horse for this team. I'm expecting a big year out of Goddard. Perhaps similar to Ertz in 2017-2018, that season, you know, that Super Bowl run where he was Mr. Reliable. Goddard becomes Mr. Reliable this season, you know. He's the one that Jalen Hurts looks to on those crucial 3rd or 4th down plays. He's the one that doesn't drop a ball, you know, that you get the ball in his hands, he's not dropping it, he's not fumbling it, you know. I'm looking to him to be that guy this season, you know. I firmly believe in him. The defense. There's a lot of questions with this defense. The biggest one, for me, where's everybody going to fit in? Fletcher Cox, Milton Williams, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter. They obviously fill your defensive tackle spots. Carter will look to prove his potential and cement himself as a reliable player both on and off the field. Jordan Davis will hopefully look to get more playing time, prove he can be on the field more often than not. At edge is where things really get murky for me. And I don't mean that from a talent perspective. In fact, the Eagles have a problem that every team wishes they have. You have the veteran Brandon Graham. You have Josh Sweat. You have Derek Barnett, at least for the time being. You have the Defensive Player of the Year runner-up, Hassan Reddick. And rookie Nolan Smith. They have insane depth, and it's a struggle to truly utilize that. Their ability to constantly swap all these guys out from defensive tackle and edge is amazing. You know, that depth. It's going to keep these guys fresh. It's going to allow them to be a great defense. However, my concern is how certain plays are going to look. Where will Nolan Smith play when any combination of Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett, if he's still on the team, are on the field? All 4 of those guys. What are we going to do when that's our combination of edge? Looking at the linebacker spot, Nakobe Dean is going to look to prove his worth as the main coverage linebacker and field general, honestly. While he often was that general at Georgia, the NFL is a different level, so he's got to prove himself. And going back to the schemes, is Nolan Smith going to play some snaps as coverage linebacker with either Nakobe Dean or Zach Cunningham? Will Smith, Dean, or Cunningham's performances be enough to mask any flaws in either of the other 3 linebackers' games? As a Nakobe Dean supporter, I sincerely wish for him to prosper, and I think both Cunningham and Nolan Smith's performances in coverage will be enough to not majorly cost the Eagles, you know. I think given the fact that he will have limited snaps as coverage linebacker will help out Nolan Smith, but maybe perhaps I'm underrating that side of his game. But I do think Dean and Cunningham will be the main ones they look to for coverage. And again, as a big Nakobe Dean supporter, I hope he truly balls out this season. Now all that's left is the DB room. At corner, the Eagles are set for now, and if they play to their potential, they should be set for the foreseeable future. They have reliable vets in Darius Slay, James Bradbury and Avonte Maddox. They have rookies like Eli Ricks and Keely Ringo. The biggest question mark on the entire team for me? Safety. At this current moment, the Eagles have Reed Blankenship, Terrell Edmonds, and rookie Sidney Brown. Blankenship proved his worth filling in for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson last year. During his time in Pittsburgh, Edmonds was a tackle machine and actually provided some worth in the pass rush. Health-wise, he's played pretty much every game in his career, only missing a couple games through 5 seasons. The main concern for me comes in coverage. In each of his 5 seasons, Edmonds allowed more than 50% completions on targets. The hope for me is that the Eagles' pass rush will be a benefit for Edmonds the way it was for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson last year. The pass rush of the Eagles will allow for more costly throws, either underthrown balls or balls thrown into tough coverage that will play into Edmonds' strengths. Another benefit is having the corners to delay any extended coverage for Edmonds. To put it simply, the Eagles' pass rush and corner play should be good enough that Edmonds won't have to take a bulk of coverage, and thus his coverage in certain situations should be elevated. However, despite the upside of these 3 safeties, I still would not be surprised if the Eagles make a trade for a cheap yet star safety either before or at the trade line. The reason I say cheap is because given their cap situation, they still have fluidity, but you don't want anything super tied to the books, so I think they'll look for a cheap option that has better upside and can solidify the spot. Special teams, it's the underrated side of football. The Eagles are set at kicker, barring any regressions from Jake Elliott, but the main concern stems from punter and special teams play overall. Sipos was truly a detriment to this team last year, and the punt team as a whole looked no further than the Super Bowl and the 2 times the special teams cost the Eagles in that game. We need a lot of much needed improvement there, and I hope they scour the market for a better punter. Who knows, maybe they can even find a trade for someone, Getting into schedule predictions though, we now reach the difficult part of the video, Last year when I was making my Eagles season predictions, frankly, I think I was a bit too humble with this team. I was excited for their future and potential, but was still weary due to how Philadelphia teams have broken my heart in the past. I try not to get my hopes up with them, So with that being said, though, I was actually fairly accurate with the Eagles season last year, with only a couple flaws. Going over last season's schedule, I called the Eagles beating the Lions in week 1. Now you could say anybody could have made that prediction, but I also predicted that it would not be an easy game and that the Eagles could not take the Lions lightly. The Eagles walked away with the win, but it was a hard-fought one. As far as the losses, I thought the Eagles would lose to Minnesota in week 2 due to their receiving duo and not knowing what to expect out of the Eagles secondary beforehand, I called us losing to Dallas at home due to the history of us trading wins and it always being at each other's home. Pittsburgh, I thought the defense was going to overwhelm Jalen Hurts. That goes to show what I was expecting out of Pittsburgh and the season for the Eagles. I called them losing to Green Bay because you could never count out Aaron Rodgers. And I believe I called them toss-up games, but I saw Indy and Tennessee being losses due to their rushing attacks and not truly thinking too well of the Eagles' rushing defense. And we saw how much that came into play in one of the Washington games and how they made changes immediately after to bulk that rushing defense. I saw them winning tough games against Detroit, Arizona, Jacksonville, Dallas, and New Orleans, and then sweeping Washington and New York. And again, I was fairly accurate. I called them winning that Arizona game, but I called it a close one. And I also said DeAndre Hopkins' presence would be missed. Very much so. That was a game that came down to the last second for them. They scratched out that win. It looks closer on paper, but they did somewhat have a close game with Jacksonville. Because Dak was injured, they blew out Dallas in that first game, I believe. Or sorry, I can't remember if it was truly a blowout. I did look back at this stuff before as I was writing the script for this one, but again, memory's not that good, but they did have a good game against Dallas. If I go look back at that schedule, the first game against Dallas, 26-17, yeah. And again, I was fairly accurate with the wins I called, but at the same time, I was off in some points, but I was still, again, it was because I was being too humble about it, Like, at that, I had them at a record of 11-6, and you know, my prediction or my expectations for that year was I need them to make it past the wild card, and I need them to have, you know, obviously I want my team to make the Super Bowl, but if we're gonna lose, I wanted it to be at the very least a close loss in the divisional where Jalen Hurts did enough to prove that he's the guy going forward, you know. And if I do say so myself, again, it was pretty accurate. Detroit, Arizona, Indy, and New Orleans were all close for the reasons I predicted them to be. They did sweep New York and should have swept Washington if it wasn't for their own foolish mistakes. And again, my flaws were only in not believing in this team. They mopped the floor with Minnesota in primetime. They mopped the floor with Pittsburgh 35-13. They embarrassed that defense. They mopped the floor with Green Bay. It just only looks closer on paper because they took their foot off the gas in that second half, you know, but they put up 40 on Green Bay. They beat Tennessee 35-10, you know. The only issue, of course, was, like I'm saying, how often they took their gas off in that second half because they felt they had things solidified, you know. We also saw games where they just kept making mistakes like Washington, like New Orleans, like Indy. Obviously, they came out with the win in Indy, but they lost those games to Washington and New Orleans, and obviously Jalen Hurts was injured for those games, so it wasn't like he was there to propel that team. But, you know, to close the video, what are my final predictions for this season, and how will it age when we come back next year? Well, week 1, we got New England. New England, to me, is a team that is truly lost in what it currently wants to do. Frankly, I just don't think they've made the proper improvements, you know. Especially to battle in the Beast Coast, you know, with Buffalo, with New York, with Miami. I don't think they have the improvements to do well enough. This needs to be a game that the Eagles establish what their season will look like. I have them starting off 1-0. Week 2, Minnesota. Well, we meet again in week 2 again. The passing offense of Minnesota will always be a problem as long as Justin Jefferson is there. Although they don't have Adam Thielen now, but again, it's Justin Jefferson. However, there's still questions with Minnesota's offensive line. With their secondary, they have pieces such as Byron Murphy Jr., but I don't think it's enough to propel them past us. I see it starting 2-0 just like last season. I don't want to say it's going to be the same thing because, again, you can never count out that Vikings offense to propel them when their defense is lacking. But I just think it's not enough. Week 3, Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay's roster remains a fearsome one, but with a mix of age and lack of proper quarterback play, I just don't see it being that big of a challenge in the sense that, I don't know. Philadelphia's main challenge for this game is going to be Tampa Bay's defense. And barring a career resurgence from Baker Mayfield, I see them getting past it 3-0. Week 4, Washington. The first of Philadelphia's rivals, the most annoying loss of last season. Washington is a very tough team to analyze. They have made some sneaky improvements, but the main questions will continue to be their quarterback play and overall health. I think the priorities for this game is shutting down their run game, shutting down guys like Brian Robinson. I blanked on who the other guy is that Washington has that is also, you know, sneakily good. Again, like I'm mentioning with their team, they're just very sneaky team, you know, as we saw last season. Antonio Gibson was the guy I was thinking of. Receiving wise, they have Curtis Samuel, they have Terry McLaurin, Scary Terry, they have Jahan Dotson. You know, they have quite a few guys there that you got to watch out for. But at the end of the day, like I said, the priorities are obviously shutting down the run game, not making sloppy mistakes like last season. And just like Minnesota, I think it's going to be a tough game. that you can't count Washington out. You know, none of the NFC East ever counts them out. None of the NFC East ever looks at them and says that's an easy win. But I still think the Eagles get past them, barring any mistakes like last season. Starts out 4-0. I mean, last season, we took care of them in the first game. You know, we did what we needed to, 24-8. It was just that game in primetime where we let stupid mistakes get the best of us, you know. But I do think they should handle it properly. 4-0. Week 5, Los Angeles Rams. Another tough team to analyze. They're stuck in cap hell. They have a bunch of aging players. And I think the biggest contributing factor to how the season will play out for the Rams, they finally have a first round pick, and there are options potentially to take, you know, in terms of taking over for Matt Stafford. Personally, if Kupp is healthy by this game, I think it'll be a fun one, but I still see the Eagles getting past a likely tanking team. Again, who knows how Stafford plays this season? Who knows how a lot of their aging players play? Again, if Kupp is healthy, it'll be an interesting one. But I do think I see the Rams tanking this season now that they finally have a first-round pick. Eagles start off 5-0. We get to week 6 against the New York Jets. Now, if you're looking at this video and you think I'm being a biased Eagles fan, having them start off 5-0, what was the complaint last year with the Eagles? Oh, they have an easy schedule. They have easy teams. Aren't good teams supposed to beat the teams that are not as good as them? Ask anyone around the league. Do they think the Eagles are better than New England, Minnesota, Tampa Bay, Washington, Los Angeles? Obviously, they'll tell you yes, especially because the NFC is really weak right now. So they should beat them. These are my predictions, but obviously, like I'm saying, a lot of these games will be tough, and if they drop certain games, like if they drop a game to Minnesota, if they drop a game to even the Rams, if they're not showing that they're going to be tanking, I wouldn't be surprised. But if you're thinking I'm being unfair, well, here we go. Week 6 against the Jets. Here comes our first loss, in my opinion. I believe the Jets will be a difficult opponent. Their defense is versatile, and they have the running attack with Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook. And if Breece Hall is healthy for this game, that run game is going to be difficult to defend. We saw how much they struggled in the run game last year. Now they've made some changes. You hopefully hope Jordan Davis has improved enough, and Jalen Carter will be as advertised to help out. But again, we didn't bring back either Ndamukong Suh or Linval Joseph, which really surprised me. I would have at least liked to bring back one of them to have for that run game, you know. With the addition of Nolan Smith, you know, I would have rather they signed Suh or Linval Joseph to fill in Derek Barnett's spot, you know, who they're looking to trade now. Who knows? Maybe they get a piece from him, or maybe they just get, you know, picks. I don't know what they're going to get from him. I don't know if he's even going to get traded. But yeah, this is going to be a game that tests both sides of our team, the defense and the offense. And just like last year, even though I was proven wrong, I still will never count out and doubt Aaron Rodgers, you know. I think this is the first loss. We're 5-1. Week 7, Miami. Another game against the Beast Coast, back-to-back. This one is going to be another close game. I just can't give the Eagles the loss, though. I think this is a game that the Eagles' defense takes over, and specifically the pass rush. Now, because of the duo of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, I could see this being a loss. This is one of those games that I would say is a toss-up for me. I just personally believe, though, that this is going to be a game that Tua is going to get terrorized. You know, that's the only way I can put it because of this pass rush, you know. This is going to be a game where Fletcher Cox, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Brandon Graham, Nolan Smith, Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, those guys, they're going to put a strain on Tua. And I would not be surprised if that's the defensive plan. Blitz like hell so that Tua can't get that ball out in time to a guy like Tyreek Hill, like Jalen Waddle, you know. Force them to do checkdowns, force them to run, force them to, you know, do the short game, and I think they will struggle, you know, especially because if you force Miami to run the football, who are they going to? You know, like that's just my opinion. Like you look at this roster, there's a reason they were the main ones people were looking at to trade for Jonathan Taylor, but they didn't pull the trigger. Their lead back is Raheem Mostert, you know? I just don't see, if you force them to run, I see this being a win for them. 6-1 to start off the season. Week 8 against Washington. Don't look at it as me counting them out, but basically the same stuff from earlier. Just don't make those stupid mistakes. You start off 7-1. Week 9, Dallas. Loss. Despite what occurred last year, I still firmly believe that the Dallas and Philadelphia rivalry will always be flipped. Dallas will beat us at home and we will beat them at home. These will just always be our toughest games, and it will hurt the momentum going into the bye, of course. Hope to see some additions going into that trade deadline. 7-2 is what I see happening. Week 11. Kansas City. The rematch. I sadly see it as a loss still. I hope it will be the closest game of the season. I hope it will be the most fun to watch. But despite them losing Orlando Brown Jr., I still think that Chiefs find a way to just squeak out a win in this game. I simply hope for a better display from the defense, and that Hurts solidifies himself in that upper echelon. But another thing to consider is it's being played at Arrowhead. It's going to be a struggle. It could be a toss-up, but I just see Kansas City taking the win 7-3. Week 12, we got Buffalo. Must be another loss, right? No. For whatever reason, I just feel it. This is going to be a tough game. This, like the Miami game and the Jets game, will be a toss-up. It'll be a tough game that tests both teams, especially defensively. I could see this one turning into a shootout, especially. But I see the Eagles' offense outscoring Buffalo because of the run game. The Eagles, how can they wear out the Bills' defense? A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, having to deal with the rushing attack of Jalen Hurts, Kenneth Gainwell, DeAndre Swift, and Rashad Penny. Not to mention Dallas Goedert being your safety net. How can the Bills' offense exhaust the Eagles' defense? I don't see it. Personally, that's just how I feel. But they don't have the rushing attack to match, you know? And sorry if I'm underrating the Bills, but that's just how I feel when it comes to the Bills' rushing attack. They have Damian Harris, James Cook, and Naheem Hines. How often did we see Josh Allen doing a lot of rushing last season? And that's the biggest thing to me. Josh Allen is a great player, but I'm not. And again, I hope when you hear me say this, you're not seeing that I'm directly comparing to him. But I'm an Eagles fan. I watched Carson Wentz hero ball. I see a lot of Josh Allen doing that. I see a lot of times where the team is struggling and he has to play hero ball and force it on his, to carry this team on his back. And I think that's going to play into this Eagles win. That makes the Eagles go into week 13 8-3. They're going to force Allen to play hero ball, and it's not going to be the best matchup, That's just how I feel, but again, I could see this game going either way. Week 13, the San Francisco 49ers. The Whiners. I actually liked a lot of your team. I actually liked a lot of your players a lot. Until you couldn't just take a single loss. Instead of directing your anger at the coach or management for not being properly prepared, you whined and complained about hypotheticals. I think this team's play will completely rely on the quarterback position, which is funny to say because it's never relied on the quarterback position. They can make miracles with anybody in that quarterback position. They've made it work with less, but I just don't see the quarterback position being that valueless, you know. You need to pray and hope that Brock Purdy was what was advertised last year, you know. If not, you gotta hope Sam Darnold has a career resurgence with your team, which he could very well have because of how the Niners team plays out, you know. They've made it, like I said, they made it work with less. I am not saying this is gonna be some blowout. I think this will be a close game. It wouldn't surprise me if it ended up being a win for San Francisco because you can never count out Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, a lot of their guys on the defense like Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, you know. But I think this is the game where the Eagles played their best game, you know. Kansas City and San Francisco are the games that are circled simply to try and prove that last year's performance wasn't a fluke or wasn't luck. I see it being 9-3, Eagles favor. But again, to the whiners, I'm not completely counting out your team and saying that the Eagles are just going to blow right past them. Week 14, Dallas, like I said, I think this one will be a win. I think the Eagles will win this one, especially because I expect a battle at this point in the season between us, Dallas, and New York for that division. And it even could be a battle for the number 1 seed. Who knows how the conference plays out. But I do see it being 10-3. Week 15, Seattle. The team we, for whatever reason, always struggle against, and for whatever reason, we're always playing in Seattle, and that's the most frustrating part to me. It's going to be an absolute battle, and I don't doubt that the Eagles could get in Geno's head and get ahead of that defense. In the end, though, I think it's a shootout, and you don't want to get into a shootout with the trio of DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, promising rookie Jackson Smith in Jigba, I believe. Hopefully I pronounced it right. And then plus Kenneth Walker in the run game. Even if it's a shootout, I think we get overwhelmed, especially because we just always struggle against Seattle for whatever reason. 10-4. Week 16 against the Giants. I think it's a win. I just think Philly has New York's number. New York's made improvements, but I don't think it's enough to sneak them past us. I look at it as 11-4. Week 17, Arizona. They're likely tanking by this point. I don't see any way that Arizona isn't tanking. 12-4. Week 18. A part of me really wants to improve upon last year and have faith in my team. Give them the win, especially because they swept the Giants last year. But similar to my thinking last year, I think the Eagles will likely have the division won by this last week. The only reason we swept the Giants last year and put as much effort into that last week was because we were battling with Dallas and San Francisco for that 1 seed for the division. And what scares me is that Dallas in their final 2 weeks are playing Detroit and Washington. I think Detroit will be fighting for their division, and so they're going to give Dallas a run for their money in that Week 17 matchup. But personally, I think the Eagles will ease off this game because they might have the division won. They might want to sit their starters. And especially, I don't know how the conference will play out. I don't know what other teams' schedules look like, especially a team like the Niners, like the Seahawks, like, the Lions even. I don't know what their schedules are looking like. I don't know what predictions I would give for them. But, if we have the division on lock, if we even have the conference on lock, they're going to sit this game. But if it's like this year again, they're going to be, and they're battling out with teams like Dallas, like Seattle, like Minnesota and Detroit, like Dallas, or I think I said Dallas, like San Francisco. I don't know if I mentioned them. Perhaps even the Giants. Then I can see them approaching this game with urgency. So I know it's not definitive, but I could see this going either way. And again, I hate that I'm not being definitive with it, but final prediction, 12-5 or 13-4. That's just the way I see this team going. I hope they don't make this blow up in my face. The 1 year I'm having faith in them to exceed a lot of expectations, to beat some really difficult teams. And, you know, I mentioned at the start, football is my favorite sport. Super excited just for it to be back. If you didn't know about my previous coverage from last year on my podcast with my two friends, I also, throughout it, covered what other games throughout that week looked like, talked about some certain fun games and any narratives that came out of it, so expect a lot of that. I'm just super excited for football to be back. You're going to hear a lot about me talking about how my fantasy football team is going, especially because I'm in 2 leagues this season. Potentially could have been in a third one, but I'm keen on my money right now, so trying to save up. So I'm just super excited. It was hilarious last season to hear me complain about some players doing bad in fantasy. It was fun to hear me excited about how the Eagles were playing, how they exceeded my expectations. And one thing I forgot to write in this script that I will kind of freehand now: expectations for the Eagles. The floor, championship, you know. The why was I gonna say NLCS? I'm thinking baseball. They need to make it to the NFC Championship game. That's their floor. Their ceiling is Super Bowl champions. It's gonna be tough to get back there. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't get back there this season, you know, but at the same time, this NFC is weak. Our biggest competition is either within our own division or teams like Seattle and the Niners, you know. But other than that, it's open. It's why I have them at 13-4 or 12-5. They should beat the teams they're supposed to. They should beat even teams that they're going to struggle against, but they should still win those close games, and they're likely going to lose some games against the tough teams like the Chiefs, like Seattle, you know, like Dallas, even drop a game to Dallas. But your ceiling is Super Bowl. That's whether you think that's me being biased or not. Like, I'm telling you, the floor is NFC Championship game, especially after last season. You make the Super Bowl, you can't have no Super Bowl hangover. You can't lose in the wild card. You can't lose in the divisional and call that season a success. No. You either make it to that NFC Championship game and lose close, or you make it to that Super Bowl, and if you break my heart again and lose close again, it still can be considered a success, but the ultimate success is winning that Super Bowl. It broke my heart last season to see them lose. After seeing that work ethic, after seeing what he's been, you know, what he's done for this team, what he's done for this city, I want to see Jalen Hurts raise a Super Bowl as much as I wanted to see Carson Wentz and Nick Foles raise that trophy. As much as I wanted to see veterans like Jason Kelsey and Jason Peters and Fletcher Cox get that championship. It's the same thing here where they're younger, but I need to see Jalen Hurts win that Super Bowl, you know? So that's my expectation. It's pretty high, but I have hope in this team.